Hello, and welcome to an American Liver Foundation Ask the Experts presentation about clinical trials. I'm Dr. Shannan Tujios, and I will be the moderator for today's program. To provide a bit of background about myself, I joined the UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, Texas in 2011, and am currently an associate professor in the Department of Internal Medicine. I specialize in evaluating and treating liver disease, including pre and post liver transplant medicine and general gastroenterology. I earned my medical degree at the University of Louisville School of Medicine and completed an internal medicine residence and a transplant hepatology fellowship at the University of Michigan and a gastroenterology hepatology fellowship at UT Southwestern. In addition to my clinical responsibilities, I am the Transplant Hepatology Fellowship Program Director, am a member of the Acute Liver Failure Study Group, and serve as a mentor for the American Liver Foundation's mentorship program. My academic interests include acute liver failure, drug-induced liver disease, and liver transplantation. In addition to publishing articles, I have co-authored several book chapters. I've also been an investigator in various clinical trials in viral hepatitis, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, Wilson's disease, and polycystic liver disease. We know people have many questions about clinical trials, and we are fortunate to have two doctors sharing their expertise today. Dr. Rohit Kohli has been at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles since 2016, where he's responsible for the Division of Gastroenterology, Hepatology, and Nutrition, and the George Donnell Society for Pediatric Scientists, while also holding an endowed chair in liver and intestinal research at the Keck School of Medicine. He received his medical degree from the Armed Forces Medical College, India in 1999, and his master's in clinical investigation from Northwestern University in 2006. While at Northwestern, Dr. Kohli first spent 3 years as a pediatric gastroenterology and hepatology fellow, and then subsequently as a transplant hepatology trainee before locating to the University of Cincinnati in 2007. His research work has focused on the pathogenesis of obesity-related fatty liver disease. He has published many peer-reviewed articles, authored many book chapters, and review articles. Dr. Souvik Sarkar is the Medical Director of Research of Florida Digestive Health Specialist and Principal Investigator for Florida Research Institute. He is a key opinion leader in the field of liver disease, especially in the therapeutic and diagnostic development for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. He received his graduate trainings under leaders in the field at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, the National Institutes of Health, and Yale University. He remains active in the American Association for the Study of Liver Diseases and the American Liver Foundation as a national mentor. Let's get started with some questions associated with clinical trials. Dr. Kohli, in basic terms, what is a clinical trial?
Thank you so much for that kind introduction and for hosting the session today. What is a clinical trial? It's where we have a scientific question based on previous knowledge that establishes a potential pathway for treatment of a disease. When we take that and move it forward through a structured and institutional review board of ethical approval, that is a clinical trial where we are offering patients the option to become subjects. They're, of course, in a patient-physician relationship for their treatment, but if there's something new being offered where they can try it out, if you want to call it that, under supervision, under the protection, the human subjects being protected by IRBs or institutional review boards, that is a clinical trial. They have the choice not to participate, but they have a choice to participate and then maybe be afforded a new modality of treatment if they are so in that treatment arm of that clinical trial, which we'll get into in a little bit more detail later. But suffice it to say, it is an opportunity to get science moved forward with the help of patients who become subjects with protection from IRBs.
Excellent. Dr. Sarkar, how can a clinical trial benefit somebody with liver disease?
Yeah, and thanks a lot again for the kind introduction. And that's an excellent question. So in terms of actually like there's trials, it does bring the most advanced and effective therapies for for diseases which have not had any like this optimal treatment. And the disease that we can think of on top of our mind right away over the last decade, which actually changed our liver field, is the treatment for Hep C, or like the hepatitis C. As we know, prior to that, we did not have any safe or effective therapies, just through actually clinical trials. And we have had success rates of almost 96% in patients which have saved all of the lives that we actually know of now. Also now, the most common liver disease is fatty liver disease, which does not have an approved treatment at this time. So of course, a trial, it can bring in therapies which can target to improve the severity of the fatty liver disease, and can be beneficial directly to the participant as well. So definitely.
Absolutely. Dr. Kohli, how is it determined who will be accepted into a clinical trial and who will not be accepted in a clinical trial?
It's a very interesting distinction that we have to make as investigators, and we do it not alone. There's an entire system in place to make sure that we do these decisions, make these decisions in a very thoughtful, patient-centered, and human protection, subject protection umbrella. And how do we go about it? We have to provide our plan, the clinical trial protocol, to our institution's review board, where there will be certain exceptions to which patient population we want to target the therapy towards. And in order to keep the general population safe, we will exclude populations that are too high at risk or at a inherent almost disadvantage when we place them in a situation of making a decision. And again, we can go over these things in more detail when there's specific situations we'll discuss later. But in very short terms, we are trying to make sure that we test this new intervention, whether it is a device or a pharmaceutical compound, in the safest possible manner with the population that is finally going to get the treatment if it's so approved by the federal authorities, such as the FDA. However, we do it in a safe and controlled fashion. And to be able to do it in a safe and controlled fashion, we have to exclude people who may be at most risk from side effects or have no ability or minimal ability to have a say in the decision process. So there's a lot of exclusions we have to build in for either safety or protection of subjects.
Dr. Sarkar, are all aspects of the clinical trial explained to participants before they agree to participate so that they have a clear understanding of why they are there?
Yeah, it is absolutely critical that all aspects of all aspects of a trial are explained to the participants. When participants are interested to join a clinical trial, it's usually this investigator and the study coordinator go over this informed consent, which the participant gets a chance to read, as well as completely understand every single step of it. And this is an essential part of the actually good clinical practice, which forms the backbone of any clinical trial. So the short answer is yes.
Wonderful. Dr. Kohli, does it cost anything to participate in a clinical trial? And can clinical trial participants actually get paid for taking part in them?
Very important. Time is money, right? So first of all, each individual participant / subject is volunteering their time. So nobody can replace that. However, there are certain allowable compensations. I think about it almost as civic duty when we think about jury and jury selection and being called to jury duty. When that happens, everybody gets a modicum of replacement for their time that they've afforded to the community. But it's nowhere close to what our time is worth. So it has to be prudent in terms of the compensation each clinical trial step provides to the families, to the patient and their caregivers, if they're children specifically. So for instance, maybe your trial will make sure you don't have any out-of-pocket costs for medications or studies that are x-rays, so forth, that are being done as part of the trial. Maybe the study will also say, we'll pay for parking or provide enough to cover meals for that day. So there will be some form of compensation. However, there should be no out-of-pocket expenses for the clinical components that are under the umbrella of the trial. So for sure, short answer again, you should not be paying things out of pocket for yourself that are truly for the purposes of the clinical trial, which would otherwise have not been done in normal clinical practice. However, in addition, you may receive some compensation, but it's going to nowhere be near the time that you're spending. It's more of a token.
Great. Dr. Sarkar, what is a placebo? And will clinical trial participants know if they're getting placebo or the actual medication being studied?
Yeah, this is very exciting like this question, right? So placebo by definition is an inert or an inactive pill, otherwise called the sugar pill, right? So this is given to a random group of participants just by random selection, especially in diseases where there is no approved treatment. So if we think about simply like in case of fatty liver disease, as we just spoke earlier, there is no approved treatment at this time. So if you are trying to compare a drug which is currently being studied with the current standard of care, and the current standard of care is there is no approved drug, you give a placebo in the other group of the study participants. Now the other question, in most cases, most of the studies are blinded. So neither the study like the participant or the investigator or the coordinator are going to know if the participant is getting a drug, is getting a placebo or getting the drug. But if you start thinking about it, if you go to Dr. Google and you look up the side effects of the agent in question, in some cases, like especially in subjects who are getting cancer therapies or other therapies where there are more side effects, participants can actually find out if they get that side effect, if they're on the medication or not. But again, the main caveat to actually keep in mind is that not all participants will get all the side effects, so that's something to also keep in mind. So yeah, thank you.
Going on that, Dr. Kohli, what is known about treatments being studied in clinical trials? And for example, will the drugs cause a lot of side effects?
Yeah, so we don't come to a clinical trial straight off. I think in the first question and answer that we'd exchanged, we talked about how there has to be a bedrock or a safety profile available to us before we go into clinical trials. And how is that bedrock built? It's built on studies that are done in what we call preclinical stages, where we are doing animal research. Sometimes we start even with biochemical research, just playing around with chemicals and seeing how they would maybe interact before we move forward into what are called safety studies. Safety studies in animals, again, small animals typically, but also in larger animals sometimes when it is necessary. And then into, excuse me, phase 1 clinical trials, which are done in healthy humans, where we're only looking for, say, how the drug is metabolized and how fast is it metabolized, and when does it show up in the blood, when does it show up in the urine, and so forth. And finally, getting to further stages of two phases of phase 2, phase 3, so forth of clinical trials where we're finally getting into populations that need the drug for a disease that they actually have. And all of those steps on the way towards a therapeutic final clinical trial, which proves the drug's efficacy in the population that we want to treat. Taking the example that Dr. Sarkar shared about hepatitis C, we would start with mice, maybe as an example, then going into healthy individuals to test the drug's metabolism and side effect profile, then going into individuals who have the disease, testing against head-to-head with placebo as the final trial. Only then will we get to the point of approval or submission for approval of all of that data to the regulatory authorities such as the FDA. So each step builds off of the next step.
Excellent. Dr. Sarkar, can clinical trial participants agree to do some parts of the study, but not others? And if they decide they no longer want to be a part of the study, can they leave the study?
Studies have a mandatory and an optional section in some cases. So the participants can choose not to participate in the optional parts of the study. All participants have the full right to withdraw from a study anytime. And that is something which is usually discussed upfront, even at the time of signing the informed consent process.
Wonderful. Dr. Kohli, will participants get the medication that's being tested when the study ends?
That's a good question. A lot of times they will have access to what is called extension studies, but it's not a guarantee. So you may want to ask, if you are interested in a study, is that a possibility in the particular trial you're enrolling with the clinical research coordinator or with the principal investigator, the doctor that is in charge of the study for you. And if there is an extension study and you have had a good experience through the trial, sign up for it.
Finally, Dr. Sarkar, how do trial participants know that their health won't get worse or the treatment they are testing won't hurt them?
Yeah, this is an excellent and a thought-provoking question, and it will intersect a bit with some of the thoughts which were brought on by Dr. Kohli earlier on. So so the most important thing is that something to actually keep in mind is that most of the medications which come into trials have actually gone through a series of steps and testing prior to going into a clinical study. The FDA, as Dr. Kohli mentioned, or the Food or Drug Administration has very strict rules for monitoring which of the drugs go into human trials. And the first trial, which is called the phase 1 trial, which actually looks for the safety in case of humans. And then subsequent studies are also designed so as to have an independent data safety monitoring board, which also monitors at different time points of the study the safety of the trial. And also does every study site staff, there's investigator coordinators are like this well trained so as to spot safety signals early on, so that the participant remains safe. So I think, but then something to keep in mind is that these are investigational products, and also individual patients may be prone to certain side effects. But as I did mention, there are multiple checks and balances along the way so as to keep the study participants safe and from any harm that can come from the study drug and from the trial.
Thank you. Thank you, Drs. Kohli and Sarkar, for this informational session. We would encourage anyone who would like to read more about clinical trials to visit the American Liver Foundation's website at liverfoundation.org. The foundation also has a helpline specialist available Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time You can provide materials via live chat. Just call 1-800-GO-LIVER or email info@liverfoundation.org. Thank you all for attending this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.